Hi everyone, welcome to Sorting Myself Out. Today will be our follow-up session with James. James came on a couple weeks ago. He's an audience member who's working on some things in his life and he wanted some guidance and counsel as far as how to move forward and what to reflect on for his personal life. He's been working on the things that he set out to work on since we talked, and now he wants to give us an update as well as get some more grist for the mill as far as things to work on going forward. Hey James, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
So, what's been going on?
Let's see. I guess quite a bit. Yeah, I've been just thinking a lot and about what we talked about last time. And yeah, I just kind of so after the last talk, I reviewed the conversation and took some notes and tried to come up with a plan moving forward. And I'm not quite sure how. If I have enough detail in the plan in the sense of maybe I don't know how to work it into very specific situations all the time, but I at least have some general ideas down. And then maybe if we have some time, I have a additional few questions asked relating to some of your guys' content. But I guess really quickly, first I'd like to say congrats to you, Ryan, for taking over or starting to take over the Center for Creative Choice. That sounds like an awesome opportunity.
Thank you very much. That means a lot. Yeah, it's a fun project. We're working on it. We got another meeting this weekend, so
Yeah,
I'll keep you all posted as it goes along.
yeah, for sure.
So, if you don't mind, actually, first let me just say a couple of things. I've got a hard stop around 5 that
Yeah,
I need to just get to some other things I have going on tonight. But
sure.
if you don't mind just starting with kind of taking us through the questions you're having about your schedule or your plan as you said it, so we can understand a little more what you're struggling with or working on there.
Yeah, sure. So, I guess one of the things that that I've been sort of working through is making sure that I really understand what the more, I guess, depressed side of me says about things, because we talked about this quite a bit last time. Um, and maybe I should just start off by saying that I'm not, like, my depression isn't that serious in the sense that I'm not suicidally depressed or even close to it, I don't think. Um, but but yeah, so that's maybe the first thing, is just trying to really understand the point of view that that side of me has on different aspects of my life. And so I guess one question I had is, if it seems to me that it's probably a good idea when these moods come up to really sit and try and pay attention to what is going on, but also at the same time, I want to be able to operate in this mode in a way that is still somewhat productive. Um, and so I guess I'm wondering how maybe either of you balance that, or maybe if it depends day to day, how serious the depression is and that sort of thing.
So what is your experience of depression then? Like you said, it's not suicidal.
Right.
Like, is it, do you have the physical lethargy, or do you get the, actually, wait, rather than prompting anything else, sort of what does your depression feel like? What does it do to your brain? What does it do to your body when
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, so first of all, I definitely noticed that I get really unmotivated to continue doing various things, especially like my schoolwork and that sort of thing. And I get very much I feel very strongly that, or I get things in my head saying things like, oh, this whole math research thing isn't going to work out. You should start looking for options in industry or something like that. You're not, like, you started too late. You're not that good of a mathematician. Or like with my other hobbies, it's just like, you you're not very good at this. Maybe if I happen to go do one of my hobbies is rock climbing. Like if I go do that and it happens to be not, maybe doesn't go as well as it did the time before that or something, I'll, get sort of depressed about that and start thinking, just like a lot of very negative self-image thoughts, I guess, like you're not really going to amount to much. It's not really going anywhere. But then when I'm in a much more positive mindset, I can definitely see that I'm making progress in these things in other areas of my life. Yeah.
And so the sort of self-talk that begins to happen matches that drop in motivation as well. So you lose sort of that energy and that motivation, and you start getting thoughts that back that up. Like, this is fucking stupid anyway, why keep doing that? And when you have those thoughts, does that feel like you? Do you get caught up into, I feel this way? Or are you able to, sort of pull back and observe the thoughts as arising?
So usually it feels like my thoughts, but I'm practicing and trying, I think getting a little bit better at sort of stepping back and sort of like if the thoughts are here, then I kind of step back and watch, I guess.
Excellent. Yeah.
And that certainly helps, but it's almost like you have to actively maintain that stepping back and watching mentality or perspective, because if you don't, it's easy to kind of get sucked back in. Yeah.
And so when you do manage to step back and observe it, you're gonna, like, it's like a performer that doesn't have a whole lot of material. The depression's gonna come up with the same stuff over and over and over again. And when you're in a better mood, so that the optimistic part of you is active, try to then allow that part of you to answer those thoughts.
Right.
And then even sort of in your most average, or you can look at what the various parts of you think about something. So the depressed side thinks this, the optimistic side thinks this, my inner child thinks this, my ambitious self thinks this. And then imagine it like, I often use, like, internally the metaphor of the king's court. So like your sort of your conscious self that is able to step back into the awareness, that's supposed to be the king. But when the depression can step up, and when it just sits in the throne seat, that's when you feel like all of that is your own thoughts. Whereas instead, you can allow that the depression has front stage in front of the throne rather than sitting down. But also when you're more level, you can sort of gather your sub-personalities and evaluate them. Like, which one of these do I want to listen to? And when you look at depression, you can say, like, you always think I suck at everything. So you might be right sometimes, but when you are, it's just by accident, because the depression doesn't look at each thing. And especially if you can find answers ahead of time for the worst shit it's going to say.
It's okay that I'm alone by myself right now. And when you, and on one of your live streams, you talked about isolation, and that was really useful to hear your perspective on that, because it seems to me that I've always wanted to sort of go into isolation to some degree, just to better understand myself. And so one of the other things I've been sort of telling myself lately is, okay, this is the part of the process of going through this, at least partial, I guess, what feels like partial isolation. And so in that way, it makes it more bearable or worth it, because I feel like I'm getting to know and understand these aspects of I guess be okay with these aspects of myself a lot more.
And so it sounds like you've, to a certain degree, have you embraced the solitude at the moment? So, like, rather than trying to find a partner immediately and focusing really on going out, you're trying to embrace the solitude at the moment.
Right,
And,
right.
okay, excellent. And it's like a certain amount of it'll be personality trait, but there is sort of a skill to learning to be alone. And
Right,
once
right.
you got that, you'll find all your relationships go so much better.
Hmm.
A person who can be alone, uh, at least to a certain type of person, is very attractive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have found that. So there's definitely been various points in my life where I've seriously considered just like completely giving up everything and becoming a monk.
Okay, yeah.
And so like, but at the same time, the other parts of me that sort of don't want to be alone have maybe kept me from fully pursuing that sort of thing.
Have you ever tried even just a weekend or a week retreat? Like, have you ever tried? Because you don't have to go and live the solitary life forever in a cave to learn
Right,
about
right,
solitude. Like the way Sam Harris repeatedly goes on silent retreats, however, overall is very active in the world. Have you ever done a silent retreat or like gone up to a cabin or someone's cottage by yourself for a weekend?
No, I haven't. I guess the most I've done is, I guess like not had contact with anybody or anything on the internet for an entire day. But I have been considering trying to, if I had some time during the summer or something, to rent a cabin for a few days and just go up there and see what it's like to just really be alone with nobody else, no internet, nothing like that. I think
Yeah,
it'd be interesting.
I'd really recommend that for you to try a weekend and see
Mhm.
how that goes. And maybe you'll find you like that monk part of you does need a chance to exist, but it may only need a couple weekends a year to
Right,
satisfy it.
right. Yeah.
One of the things you asked is about, how we go through these experiences for ourselves and how we manage them, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm going to share something with you guys. Actually, I've got something here on my screen. Hold on a second. This might be useful. So as I'm sharing this, just kind of reflect on how you can relate or what it might look like for you.
Hmm.
All right. So here we have a list of subpersonalities that these are, this isn't the most up-to-date version, but this is what I've identified for myself. And basically, if you start identifying these subpersonalities for yourself, you'll start to notice which ones are the most active and which ones are, less active for you on a day-to-day basis. Some of them are going to be there all the time. Some of them are going to be hovering in the background. So, like, in other words, some parts might be more strongly predetermined than others for you, right? You might
Right.
have some that haven't been nurtured very much, but they're still there. But I find that the core of them that I experience, there's probably about 10 of them that I experience strongly on a regular basis. So when it
Hmm.
comes to depression, what I've identified is I've got the sensitive young boy, which should say young boy here.
Hmm.
He's six years old.
Hmm.
And this guy has developed a lifelong strategy, which I'm changing actively over the past several years, of taking sensitivity to the black hole.
Hmm.
The black hole is the depressed part of me that has nothing positive to say about virtually anything. It's fairly nihilistic and feels generally claustrophobic, socially disgusted with anything that I have to do or any sort of obligation, is very much isolated, not in the positive sense that you guys were talking about, but isolation in a sense of running away or hiding. So what in the past what's happened is the young boy has either gone to the black hole or to the challenger, and the challenger is anger, challenging. And one of the things that I got rebellious when I was younger, so I was kind of a rebellious challenger, rebellious against teachers, parents, etc. But the thing is with all these subpersonalities is they can also have a flip side. So one of the theories that I developed coming out of Dr. Strachan's model is called the sacred flip. And the whole point of the sacred flip is, can you find the flip side of that part? And for me, the flip side of the challenger is to challenge things in a positive way, challenge things out of love, challenge things out of the best interest of the group, challenge things intellectually, challenge things in a balanced way. And that's things. So this is what's called repurposing. You can always repurpose a part. This is the next step. Well, after identifying the parts, is figuring out what they're doing. You identify them, figuring out the dynamics, which is where you're at right now. You're just starting to learn about this for yourself.
Right.
Then what you get into is, okay, so how is the behavior currently being enacted? And then you ask yourself from a deep place, which you could call soul or the self or whatever you want to name it as, what is the way that I want this part to work for me? So in this model, you never treat a part as if it's going to go away. Okay? You treat it as if it's a part of who you are. You don't assume that it's going to leave you. Now, there might be some things that leave you in life, messages that you've gotten from parents or family members or society, and these are things that might not necessarily be true parts of who you are, But the true parts of who you are, you can be fairly certain that you're going to experience them throughout a lifetime on a fairly regular basis, sometimes more than others. So with the challenger, I did this whole process of repurposing that. With the black hole, it's a little tougher. The black hole...
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah. So the black hole, it's tougher to repurpose the black hole because it's such an all-consuming gravitational force. Yeah. And Mercury and I have been discussing this lately. But one of the things that does seem to work with the black hole, there's a few things. One is turning it into kind of a tender grieving process. Just understand, like being able to be sad with an open heart without necessarily turning it into a negative storyline. The soul's job and the rest of the part's job is to be aware of if the black hole starts spinning a negative storyline. If the black hole starts spinning a negative storyline, all parts of me have full permission to just tell it to shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one way that I deal with it sometimes. Other times I kind of, instead of going into the negative story, I say, hey, black hole, okay, listen, I get that you want to feel this way, or this is the way that we're going to feel for a little bit. No negative story. But if you just need to relax and not do anything for a few hours, or if you just need to feel this way for a few hours, then that's okay. And sometimes I find that is really helpful to just give myself permission to go into that space without fighting it, because it can be extremely taxing to try to fight that downward pull.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, if you start noticing, like if you think of this as the dynamics of the psyche, if you think of this as like a symphony, okay, of instruments, okay, the energy this is your system, this is your human system, your psyche. The energy is connecting, it's going all throughout your system. And there's only, and Sigmund Freud figured this part out, there's only enough energy in the system for one or two parts to be active really strongly at once. For example, like you're not strongly feeling every single part of you right now. You're feeling probably one part of you in the forefront and maybe one or two in the background. But the part of you that's in the forefront, that's the one taking the most energy. So at any given moment, on any given day, your energy is circulating throughout this entire psychic system. And these scribbles look absolutely ridiculous. But but basically, you get my point. And you can start to really to use this consciousness or the self or the soul or what Mercury was calling as I think he said the higher self or the witness consciousness. You can really start using that to your advantage. And I'm going to get out of this. And once you start witnessing what your psyche is doing on a more regular basis, then you can start imposing a little more free will on it.
Right.
If you don't bring in the witness, consciousness, awareness, then your free will is going to be lower
Right.
because you're going to be more determined by just how you react. Like something could happen right out in your environment that triggers your sensitivity.
Right.
And that sensitive trigger, if you're not aware of that happening in the present moment, you might just all of a sudden be swept into that dynamic where all of a sudden you're having these negative thoughts about yourself and so forth. Now, notice the difference, because for me, the young boy is different than the black hole.
Right. Yeah.
The young boy is just sensitive. It's just
Right.
period, you know, and he gets scared into reporting to the black hole.
Right. Okay.
The young boy is working on actively in my life. As the young boy, I'm trying to bring that fear to other parts of me, like a good parent.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've been so used to being parented by this bad parent, this black hole, you know, that it's taken time to retrain me that I have all these other parts of me and resources that I can use to restructure the dynamics of my psyche. So you might experiment with, if you start feeling sensitivity, what part of me can I bring this sensitivity to?
Mm-hmm.
What voice inside me? And you could even think of it like, what would a little boy need in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
Would a little boy need loving discipline? Would the little boy need mothering understanding? Would the little boy need fun? Does a little boy want candy? These are all things that if we can learn to attune to, I think as people who experience depression, that we have a much stronger chance of being able to ride out that wave without being defeated by it. But the last point that I'd like to make, because I had this really wonderful and powerful podcast with Dr. Clifford Mays last night, and unfortunately, for some reason, YouTube blocked the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and one of the things he was talking about is how corrupt the education system was, and it was really good. But we also got into depression and yeah. So one of the things he told me is, you know, Jung's concept of enantiodromia.
Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, he just said, like, just notice the emergence of all the spectrum of your feeling experiences, including depression. And he's like, instead of resisting it, sometimes it's okay to just let yourself get depressed, to let yourself feel it. But there's a big difference between actively engaging a story and feeling something.
Right.
The story is something that you can really just start to do away with actively. You can work with having something to respond to, like Mercury talks about with that story. But the feeling is something that you can learn how to be with.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll just give you this example. There is what is, and then there's the story we make up about what is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. So like what is it just is what is. I feel this. I'm having this experience. Now the story I'm making up about what is, that's the part that I can challenge a little bit and say, you know what, like, okay, I'm having this feeling of heaviness, this sensation, and I'm assigning a bunch of meaning to it. Is that the meaning that I really want to assign to it? Right?
Yeah.
If you think of it like sensation, emotion, so as a layer cake, sensation at the bottom, emotion on top of sensation, and then story and words on top of emotion.
Right.
Like really, like even emotions are just sensations that we've assigned a word to. Right? Like think of the color red. How many different tones of red are there?
Right.
There's like invariable like amounts of that you couldn't even count. So if one thing to think about is, what is the sensation I'm having? And then if it helps to label it as an emotion like sadness or anger or whatever, self-doubt or whatever, that's okay. But really focus on, what do I actually feel? What's my experience? I feel a tingling. I feel a sharpness. I feel a heavy heat. I mean, this is heightening your witness consciousness.
Yeah.
This is accessing the part of you that sees all things but identifies as none of them.
Right.
That's going to be an incredibly powerful exercise if you can master that. I'm experiencing it today. I don't feel well today at all. I feel down. I feel, and I've been doing really well all week, so it's kind of just an off day. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just noticing a heaviness in my chest. I'm noticing that my heart feels raw and vulnerable. I'm noticing that I feel like a little discombobulated, like I'm moving through a fog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm noticing stories want to come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Noticing stories want to come in and say, oh, you've taken on too much, or this, your video with Dr. Mays isn't up, and that's such a waste of work that you did on that. And
Mm-hmm.
you're leaving to go to your residential session for grad school next week, and you don't even want to do that, and blah, 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 just blah, 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 like
Yeah.
negative. And that's the story that is trying to sneak its way in. And so far, I've just kind of been watching that.
Yeah.
And I have pushed back against it a couple times with that, because
Right.
if you could, one of the things that's also really cool is that you can go to that witness consciousness,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes it has things to say.
Right.
And sometimes if you can, one of the things I noticed when you said what you've been saying back, it didn't feel fully powerful to me. It felt kind of like getting closer, like coming up with a response, but it didn't feel like boom, like I'm on track, I'm connected, this is me, boom. If you can come up with that, like when Mercury's talking to his angel, if you can come up with that and that intense connected, the black hole, I'm speaking from my own experience, won't have anything to say to that.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't have a response. It just kind of hides. It's like, oh no, it's the sun. It's too bright. So there's my 20-minute rant or 10-minute rant.
No, that was really helpful. I guess maybe I had been thinking about it a little bit, but not so explicitly, this distinction between the feeling and the story, and allowing yourself to feel these emotions without engaging or accepting the story that sort of comes on top of that. And it's almost like what you're saying is you want to peel back the story layer and just have the emotions.
Yeah.
Or at least pull the power away from the story layer.
Exactly. Yeah, because the story will perpetuate. It will, the concept of all illness is in a form inflammation. Like every physical illness is inflammation. Of some sort of inflammation is happening in the body. The same thing is with anything that we typically call pathological or mental imbalances. It's just these so stories agitate.
Yeah.
Stories agitate those natural feelings that we're having. The cool thing about the psyche is if you just leave it the fuck alone and just cooperate with it, is it'll heal.
Easier said than done.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what he was saying about like the power of, so the emotion comes and it starts suggesting a story, but the power of story, I think, is just vastly underrated, because the right story will take you deeper in. Like, stories create emotions within us. Like, when I read Jerusalem, I fucking like cried for part of that book. Literally was crying. Other parts I laughed out loud. So if from an emotion you don't like a depression, you come in and add a depressing story, you're going to feed more energy down into the depression. Whereas a different story can start feeding something else into your system. And just about like everything Ryan said there, I could take almost any 2-minute part of what he said and we could probably expand that into a whole conversation. But before we do that, I want to jump back from like the depth that we all started at, and I want to say 2 far more simpler things. Also, I woke up feeling really fucking low today, same as Ryan. Came down, thought like, how am I going to prepare for this, get my energy up? And I took a moment just to like notice both myself and my environment. And last night I had like my little kids over last night. They slept here, and like my living room was a disaster. There were like I was playing recklessly with them last night that just we trashed the room. There were toys fucking everywhere. And yeah, I was really depressed, didn't want to fucking move, but I got up, gathered up all the kids' shit, took it into the playroom, put it away, tidied up the room a bit, and felt just a little better. Put on some good music, went and did a few push-ups. I didn't push it too hard. I just went and did like fucking 5 minutes of exercise. And I didn't want to do either of those things, and yeah, I bet you if I hadn't had this call with you, I wouldn't have done them. But it was like, fuck, I gotta pull myself together for this talk. I'm gonna do these couple things. And yeah, I do feel better from that. So if you're feeling depressed, clean your fucking room. And I know it's hard to clean your room when you're depressed, but our environment affects us, and everything, like people fight back on the clean your room because Peterson connects it to not criticizing the world. But fuck that whole political side of it. Like, clean your room, you'll fucking feel better. To the point where like serious magicians will talk about how important all of that is, like at vast length, bringing all kinds of importance. And if you can exercise, it's really hard when you're depressed, but if you can get a routine of exercise, overall, I expect you'll have less depression. And if like, do you exercise at all? Sorry.
Yeah, I do. I think most of my exercising is through rock climbing. I usually do that 3 times a week at least. So that's, and you know, I do like push-ups and that sort of thing every once in a while as well, but I think that's mostly where my exercise comes in.
Excellent. And I think, if I'm not wrong, Ken Wilber talks about, or used to talk about if like weightlifting and how that's good for you. So if you could add a bit to your routine, and I think he said it was just something like 15 minutes 4 times a week, but that when you're activating that growth hormone, because like there's exercise that is all, you know, cardiovascular and everything, but where you're not tearing the muscle up a lot. And then weightlifting, you're really tearing up a muscle. And that growth hormone you release supposedly has tons of beneficial sides to it. So if you can add a little bit of bodybuilding, like if you look at Dave Chappelle now, he's all cut and people ask him about it. It had nothing to do with wanting to look better. It was, it helped him burn up the negative emotions. And so a little bit of bodybuilding, like whether you care about putting on muscle or not, could give you a little kick. And if I'm not mistaken, I think someone said that that routine of at least like 15 minutes 4 times a week, as long as you have that growth hormone released, will make your body the equivalent of 10 years younger. And then even you fight off disease like you're 10 years younger. So the psychological stuff's more interesting, which is why I think we just jumped right into it. But the clean your fucking room and do a bit of bodybuilding go really far. So now, to jump back into more fun.
Well, I'm at the point now for myself where I go exercise even when I'm depressed. I just got back from the gym before, and depression's a relative term too. It's like there's depression like can't get out of bed for 2 weeks, and there's depression like feeling a little low today. Like it's a big spectrum.
Oh, and the other thing with all these negative emotions as well, because we're all talking to you here as if we've assumed one step. The other thing is, if you're depressed, if you're suddenly upset, check and see if there's a proper reason, because not all depression is anything you fucking talk about. Like, your dog just got hit by a car. Like, yeah, okay, you should be feeling depressed. You know why? Or even anger. Like, yeah, maybe somebody's doing something really wrong right now. And rather than rewriting, like just focusing on rewriting your story, check and see if there's something practical that actually needs to be engaged.
Is there wisdom?
Once you've looked at that, go back to all this psychological and meditation and all that stuff. But, but with the power of story, even I don't know, did you see our talk with Angelina, the one entitled Escaping from Hell?
No, I really want to though, because I saw the live chat where she started engaging with you guys, and so I really want to watch that one for sure.
I think there's a good example of the power of story there, because when she starts off and we're discussing everything from a practical real world side of everything, like there's a lot of depression to deal with there, and she was in a was, and to a certain degree still is, in a very, very, very bad situation. But towards the end, rather than just like, I set aside the psychological part of myself and brought out the magician. And what I did was told her a different story about what was going on. That was in taking the same facts in, but looking at them from a different perspective that I knew she held. So because she told me she was very into New Age and saw this as the transition of ages, like she's very into all that stuff. So what I find is, like when I'm working with someone, I try to step into their view of reality as much as I can and meet them where they live and deal with their reality. So she's concerned with the shift of the ages and all of this. And so I said, instead of looking at the details of your life, I'm going to tell it to you like a myth. And so I told it like a myth where there was a world going through the end change, like this transition, and that energies needed to be lifted, and that one sweet soul volunteered to enter into a difficult place in the world, into one of those local hells Peterson says people can create. And that I, the magician and psychopomp, had been brought to her by the death of her dog, which is all like, it matches the facts. It's the death of her dog that made her reach out to me. And I said, so instead of looking at it from the real world, right now, the magician is talking to that soul, explaining to that soul that it chose to come into hell so that it could find its way out, transmute those energies, and a shift in this, or assist in this shift of changes. Where again, even like Peterson says, every little good shifts us to the good. Every little bad shifts us to the bad. And after discussing that story, which was the same facts told mythologically, she was like laughing at some points towards the end. It's like, observe the power telling someone the right story can have on them. And then notice that you do that to yourself consciously, whether you're aware of it or not. Like, everyone's doing this shit. All the stuff that I call magic about stories and controlling thoughts, and people are doing that anyway. So you might as well realize the power of the stories you tell yourself and start building on direction you want to go.
In the training that I did with the Earth-Based Institute, where we learned a method called nature connected coaching, which is a profound method of working with people. One of the things we talked about is bringing it from story to myth, and one of the things that is really clear is that myth is the language of the soul, and story, like the limited type of story, which isn't really a myth, is more the language of the different parts of you trying to make sense of reality, right? So like there's a story that's more identified with limitation or personal identity or day-to-day life, and that's not bad. That's always going to be there. But then there's myth, which is kind of the vision of your life, the higher power. And that is so powerful. And I love that Mercury brought that up, because if you can get from story to myth, you're essentially going from self to soul. You're transcending one layer of existence. Like Ken Wilber says, transcend and include. You're not excluding self, you're transcending and including. So you can still live a life of having a story. My name's Bob, and I'm the mailman, and I have this feeling, and this is what's going on in my life. And then you have the myth, which is what's the purpose? What's the juice? What's the vitality? What's what color is my life with meaning?
So I guess a quick question on that to make sure I understand. If you're, say, a Christian person, would the myths in Christianity be the myths that you're referring to of, I guess, your higher self, or the ones that you sort of identify with as the myths of your overall life or higher self? Or are you talking about something that's maybe a little bit more individual?
It can be both. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like you can have a cultural or societal or religious myth that you
Yeah,
identify
right.
with, and then you have your own personal hero's journey within that story.
Right.
So if
Right.
you're a
Yeah.
Christian, like you're working under the bigger umbrella of the Christian mythos, and
Right.
then your personal hero's journey is, what are you becoming in that process? And then you use that trickle down language to explain your personal myth.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
The meta narrative just trickles down until it funnels into a story that makes sense for you.
Right.
For me, I prefer something a little more cross-cultural. So I might pull in aspects of Christianity and Hinduism and, Jungian psychology and Native American mythology and personal experience. And then just I have this soul tree, which is my myth. But
Mhm.
it doesn't matter really what it is in my experience, as long as it's something that feels deeply meaningful to you.
Right. Right. Mhm.
To me, it's like speaking different languages,
Yeah.
but the whole point of speaking languages is to communicate.
Right.
So like if you think of like a language that bridges spirit to soul or something like that, it's just a language. Like the myth is the language you speak in order to have a meaningful existence.
And like when it comes to sort of my magic as well, yeah, with anyone, I try to step into their universe. And so
Right.
I would work with a Christian by stepping entirely into their understanding of Christianity. But even what Ryan was saying there about how you have your personal myth and then you can have your collective myth, like your religion, even there, every single person automatically, whether they think they are or not, is each inventing their own version of Christianity. Everyone, even who
Right.
attends the same church and is listening to the same preacher, is hearing different words subtly differently, imagines Christ in their mind differently, hears the same stories, takes different meaning. With the invisible gorilla, everyone's got their own parts they're not seeing. Everyone's overlaying their own interpretation. Everyone means something different by God, even within Christianity. And so every Christian is automatically making their personal layer as well. Just many of them aren't aware of the difference. They think they're living out. But I mean, look at what Christians do. Like some Christians martyr themselves, like stand up for someone and are put to death voluntarily. And other Christians firebomb abortion clinics and protest at graveyards. Like that's very personalized already all over the place.
Yeah.
But pretty much everything I do magically could be done entirely Christian. And the same as Ryan, I look into a bit more stuff. But no, like absolutely, Christianity's full of magic where you take bread and turn it into human flesh, of your God, and you consume it. And angels, there's all the layers of reality, and angels and archangels and seraphim, and there's miracles and saints, and just that's all magic to be worked. Absolutely. And so were you asking about Christianity just as an example, or are you specifically Christian or exploring Christianity?
Yeah, so I was mostly asking it as an example, but it's because it's an example I'm familiar with. So I grew up Catholic, and then like many people, I sort of went through the whole Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse atheist phase, and then started listening to Peterson, and then sort of got into Jung, and I'm sort of trying to, in some ways, find my way back to a form, I guess, of Christianity that I can honestly believe in. So like this is something that sort of connects to a few things. So when Ryan showed us the chart of the different subpersonalities of himself, that reminded me of something that I started doing a couple months ago, and I've gotten sidetracked off of it, but I tried to indicate which parts of me believe what about, I guess, what God is, because this is one thing that you also talked about in one of your live streams about how you felt like you had to come up with a conception of what God is that works for you. And this is something else I also wanted to ask about, like how do you have a conception of God that is articulated out quite thoroughly for each of your sub-personalities? Or do you have one that is sort of like for your whole self and that each part of you more or less agrees with as like the right or a proper conception of God?
Yeah, so I have both. I have a
Okay.
personalized definition for each subset, but then the
Mhm.
overarching one encompasses it all. It's like, Ryan says, transcends and includes each lower
Right.
level. Same
Right.
way Ken Wilber talks about integral thinking, transcends and includes all the others. So it's
Right.
that way. And for me, a lot of it I don't have articulated like in words, right? Because
Sure.
there's so much nonverbal thought and imagery and whatnot. And I'm just beginning to share all of this. So
Yeah.
I will find the verbal articulations more later. But I do find like synchronicity provides me with a good slogan to remember, like to sort of encapsulate the overarching one. Is at one point I found out what my family, like I looked up my family crest and motto.
Okay.
And the motto for the Black family was, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, but non crooks said look. So it's like NONCRUX which means not the cross, but it's light. And I already had a Sacred Heart tattooed on my chest that I was like getting stuff added to. And I added the family slogan on it. Like non-crooks said, looks, not the cross, but it's light. Meaning, I guess whenever any of my family members had to stand up for something, they made it clear we're standing up for the God behind the cross.
Right.
Not the cross. So it's to say not the cross, because the cross is our interpretation of God. It's our not that, but the light behind it that none of us can explain. And so that, and all of my parts are fine with that. Like, yeah, absolutely, you're right. Not what we all think, but the truth. And that's the way I look at everything now, which you have to be very comfortable with. I don't know.
Right.
And you have to be very uncomfortable that we often want to learn so that we know what's going on. It's like, the unexplored territory, like the cat. You want to explore it so you feel safe. But we do it almost imagining that when we explore the territory, there's not the unknown. But no, the more you explore, the bigger that explored circle, the bigger the amount of unknown you recognize. It gets bigger as you go, not smaller. So you have to be brave enough to walk into that void. So yeah, I define the overall God as not what I can define, but what is.
When I work Strachan's self-soul spirit model with clients, one of the first things that we do is we identify their subpersonalities. We identify the parts, which can take a while. Like that can take a whole 2 hours just to identify them. And then you go through this interview process where you interview each one of the parts, and you have to speak from the first person. So if you're talking to the challenger, if you're talking to the artist, you have to say, I am the artist, and this is what I'm all about. This is my beliefs. This is my outlook. And even in working with clients and doing any sort of intervention or working on a life issue, if we're working this model, which I use heavily, it's always speaking from the part that you're in. So you're owning the voice that's speaking. A lot of times what happens is we try to cram ourselves into singularity.
Yeah.
And this is a way of really owning, like right now I'm the black hole and I don't want to fucking do shit. You know what I mean? And fuck you guys and fuck this and I don't care. And that's called being authentic. Like owning your experience. That's what Gestalt's all about. And then the energy starts circulating, and then there'll be an objection from another part. But I don't like that. You just hurt their feelings, and why'd you do that? And you shouldn't have said that. And so it creates all this grist for the mill, in which the psyche just presents itself as it is. And if you follow that home, what you're going to get is some sort of integrative point of deep work that you can carry forward. So I strongly recommend starting to learn to speak from the part that you're in. I am the depressed part. I am the boy. And really it's called psychodrama. That's one of the words that you can use for it. Gestalt, whatever. And do that psychodrama and see what gets generated. You know?
Yeah.
It's helpful to do it with a guide, because when you're with a guide, they're helping you to stay grounded, but also to notice when different parts come up. Like you can see if you're good at reading facial expressions. You can,
Right.
oh, you just switched to another subpersonality. What subpersonality are you in now? Or if you know the person really well, you can see, oh, you're in the young boy now. Is that true for you? But you never tell them. You ask, you confirm. You say, I'm noticing something that sounds like the young boy. What's coming up for you? Or you don't even assume. You can just say, I just noticed something changed. What just changed for you? Right? So you always give the power over the other person.
Right.
So you're the one who kind of gets to discover yourself in that process.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it kind of reminds me of how we sort of approached this stuff last time we talked with respect to that dream that I mentioned to you guys. So yeah. Definitely relevant.
Actually, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, you said you had a hard stop, so
yeah.
I don't think I have any last minute things.
Did you say you had a question about the channel?
Question about yeah, I'm blanking on what that question was right now. But yeah, if there was, I don't remember it at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, can you just tell us what you're taking away? Was this helpful for you? What are you going to do going forward? What is this bringing up for you?
Yeah. So I think it really explains how important it is or shows me, I guess, how important, and that I need to continue working on figuring out what stories different parts of me tell when they're sort of in the driver's seat, and being able to, at least for some parts of me, sort of step back and not take the story seriously, but allow the feelings to still play themselves out as needed. Both so that mostly so that I don't repress anything, because it seems to me that trying to sort of repress or run away or mask feelings is not a good thing. And yeah, just get to understand. So because when you brought up the different parts of yourself in that chart, it seemed like you really, really understood not just each individual part, but how they interact with each other. And I think the part that I haven't figured out yet is how each of these parts interacts with each other for me. And so that one definitely sounds quite important as well. Something I hadn't really thought about before. Yeah.
Also, while you're examining those things, something just came to mind that Zizek said to Peterson on their recent debate, where Zizek pointed out that we often claim to want something that we don't actually want, that we walk around asking for something, and that therefore, like, the worst thing you can do to someone is give them everything they want. And I'm not saying I've observed that in you yet at all. Like, this isn't specific to you, but I've noticed that generally. And I found when I went into isolation, as I was examining the parts of myself, I found all kinds of shit in there that I was claiming I wanted and realized I didn't. So while you're looking around, examine what it is you claim you want out of life and see if you really do. Yeah, and are you still there? I've got a frozen screen.
Yeah, I think we lost him. His internet connection's been spotty. So that was a good session, though.
Yeah, and shit, sucks that we lost him.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he had a lot more to discuss anyway, so I bet we'll just be talking to him again soon.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah, let's talk to him again soon. And everything going good with you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, he's back. Hey, we're just wrapping. We're just wrapping up.
Yeah. So something happened, and I guess I just lost connection to the internet or something for a minute. Yeah.
No problem. Yeah.
So
So
what we did just say is that it seems like there was a lot you'd had to talk about that we didn't even get to. So if you want, we can just talk again sometime soon and follow up from where we left off today.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great. We can, I mean, yeah, we'll be in touch by email, but yeah, there's definitely um, other things that we could talk about that I think would be, at least for me, useful.
yeah.
Also, I'm looking forward to hearing, like, after a bit of time, what you do discover in yourself.
Yeah.
Don't, again, don't share anything you don't want to.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm interested if you ever do put together a bit of a mandala yourself, like of your sub personalities, or if you come across anything that you've been walking around thinking you want, and then on closer inspection, you're like, why the fuck have I ever been claiming to want that? I'd be really interested to hear what you find when you're exploring on that inward journey.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and what I want to leave you with is notice what you do with your sensitivity.
Okay.
Okay. Notice how you respond to it. Notice what your automatic reactions are to feeling sensitive.
Yeah.
Notice what the dynamics bring up. Do you turn that into something? Do you have other options to is it just so uncomfortable in the moment that you take it straight to this place it doesn't necessarily need to go? These are all things to just be aware of. And you
Sure.
don't even try to change it right now unless you feel like you're ready. Just notice it. Just watch it. And next time we talk, I'd love to hear how that process goes. Are you willing to try that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely try. Maybe I'll make an effort to really write these sorts of things down so that
Great work, man.
yeah.
I'm really I would say this in the way that I can't. Let me think here. I don't want to say proud. I was gonna say I'm proud of you, but I don't like. It doesn't feel right at all. Pride isn't the word for it. I'm touched by your self-exploration, your courage, and your willingness to grow, and you're inspiring me.
Yeah, I was going to say the word better than proud is inspiring. And so for you, but I mean, not just you, like you, Nolan, Angelina, everybody who's been interactive on the channel, I'm really inspired that so many people are pushing themselves so hard right now. It's really impressive because tons of people go through their whole life without going this deep on themselves as you have already. So like it's inspiring and makes me a little more hopeful about everything overall to be meeting more people like you. Yeah. Otherwise, in the news, you hear the shittiest things about everybody. I live very isolated. I'm very much a hermit. So I haven't had much interaction with the outside world in a long time, other than seeing like news and stuff like that. So it's, really pleasant to meet you and the other people who've been interacting on the channel.
Thank you for tuning in to Sorting Myself Out. If you're enjoying this channel, make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button so you don't miss anything going forward.